Barcelona are through again to the quarter-finals of the UEFA Champions League, and Chelsea follow Manchester United out of the competition. Two English teams gone in 24 hours. There were 5 in the last 16, and now Manchester City, who are the bookies' favourites tonight ahead of Barcelona, and Liverpool are the 2 Premier League teams who remain. Richard, losing 3-0 on the night, can Chelsea, you know, there were moments in that game, but can they have any complaints about this over 2 legs?
No, I don't think so. I think we'll move on to it a little bit later, but you look at the 4 goals they conceded and they were all avoidable. You know, they were all individual errors somewhere along the line, and for all the play they had today, the chances, half chances, they never tested the goalkeeper. He never had to make a save, really, you know. So I think over the 2 legs, Barcelona certainly the better team, and yeah, as a competition progresses, if you make the mistakes that Chelsea made over the 2 legs, there's no chance for you, you know. And certainly against a team like Barcelona, they punished them and took full advantage of it.
And I think the point Eamon was made beforehand, like if you make errors against Barcelona, they will really punish you.
Yeah, the higher up you go in the game, the better players you're playing against, they punish errors. I mean, Ronnie made a point in his post-match summary that in the 2 legs of the tie, Chelsea hit the woodwork 4 times. And the penalty appeal also looked legitimate to us, although again Ronnie wasn't sure, but in general you'd have to accept that they were just short, Chelsea. They were much better tonight and in the first leg than Manchester United, for example, against Sevilla in the 2 games. I think they're got a very good coach, just short in key areas at the back. A little bit short of experience, and Fabregas in midfield doesn't have the legs anymore, so he and Kante had to do an awful lot. So I think Barcelona were good. You know, they were efficient, they got the job done. If the penalty had been awarded and taken, it would have been 2-1 with about 25 minutes to go. That would have been a nervous time for Barcelona. But there's a lot of ifs and buts in that statement. So the right team went through, but I don't think Antonio Conte has anything to be ashamed of, or his players. They're playing, you know, probably the best team in Europe, and they acquitted themselves well, I thought.
Yeah, that's it. I think they were left with a lot of like what ifs, just the usual stuff that you're left with in every dressing room after you leave. But the chances they created, I think they can take that as a positive, but they weren't clinical enough. The post and hitting the crossbar, you look for those things will boost their confidence, and they can look back at the penalty issue. That should have been a penalty, I'd agree with Eamon, but overall, while they'll be disappointed with the result, they'll regret certain moments in the two games. I don't think they can have a complaint with the outcome. They didn't do enough when it really, really mattered. And this stage of the competition, we're always discussing, you know, what's the comparative strengths and weaknesses of the league. Teams that do well in the Champions League, they've got to do it when it matters, and the English teams tonight and last night came nowhere near it.
And Richie, you know that the focus will now, from a Chelsea point of view, go on to the future of the manager. And he has a contract till 2019. We know that he does not sign the players. He's on record as saying that, and that we discussed that beforehand too. Where does that go now?
I think before this tie, it looked as if, given what we know from a distance, the relationship that the manager has with certain personnel above him within the club has broken down completely. He's made public his gripes that he's not in charge of the transfers, or doesn't even get listened to when it comes to the transfers. You could turn around and say, well, you knew that was the case before you went in there, but he's obviously unhappy. I don't think the club would be particularly happy with him. Apparently he goes via his assistant manager to speak to the club director, Maria Granovskaya, who makes all the decisions. So I can't imagine any other outcome in the summer other than him leaving, and I think this result tonight only makes that even more likely.
I think Richard, he has said he will honour the contract, but you know, we'll see what happens in the coming months.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a big job in Paris as well in the summer. I know PSG will probably get rid of their manager, and Conte and Mourinho will be the 2 people that they'll be looking at, knowing that they are unsettled at their clubs. And I think for Chelsea, they will move them on. It's where they go next. You know, I think, who do they look at? Maybe Pochettino or someone like that if they can take him, but they need to go with someone who can add a little bit of energy into that team, a little bit of pace maybe or something into it, because they are short. They're still short, and somewhere along that line in that dressing room, there's a negative influence because there's bad stories coming out all the time. Players down tools really easily, and within that group, there's a group of players who aren't being professional in that group when it comes to listening to the managers, to listening to whoever they are. They're letting out tales and they're not performing on the field.
Yeah, Eamon, how serious for you is that issue? And we mentioned it when we were talking about Hazard before the match, that there is he's a fantastic player, but like some of his colleagues, there is that tendency to down tools, I guess, professional players.
Yeah, well, they down tools in Mourinho's last year and got him sacked. Because and that was Fabregas was at the heart of that, I would say. I think obviously Hazard is an important player, and the senior players and the better players set the mood, not just in the dressing room, not just on match day, but the training ground. If you're all in together, you win together, you lose together. That kind of culture and that kind of atmosphere is important. Now, I think Conte went there and picked that club up off the floor and that group of players, Richard. I mean, and they won the championship, and so haven't had a bad start. Lost 3-1 to Arsenal, and were poor. These are his first few games. Lost to Liverpool at home, were poor, and he got Victor Moses, who'd been out on loan for 3 or 4 years, played him as a wing back. Alonso converted him and made a team, like in a matter of weeks, that went on and won the Premier League very convincingly. And I think he's a top-class coach. Now, what he needed to take the next step up was players, because now they've got the Champions League to contend with and the expectations of champions, and that's when the fault line. And the other thing was Costa, the centre forward. He was unhappy. He was 22 goals he scored last year.
Big player. Yeah.
Take him out, you don't score goals, and that's what's happened. So I think he's a very good coach. I think he's conducted himself with dignity. He will find a job, maybe in Paris, and he'll prosper. Chelsea will go on being a bit of a mess, and the answer Abramovich or his people would give you, yeah, we sacked Ancelotti, yeah, we sacked Mourinho, yeah, we're going to sack Conte, but we've won the Premier League 5 times in the last 10 years. Yeah,
and a Champions League, and these are the things that they will point to.
I think one of the flaws, I think, in the setup of Chelsea, and you would hear it every time a manager seemed to be under pressure. There would be stories leaked to the newspapers that the key players within the dressing room, go back to John Terry's day and Frank Lampard, they would have discussions with the owner, or they had some kind of access or line of communication to the owner. And I'm thinking, why are the players speaking to the owner? Like, I think it always fed into this idea that the players weren't as accountable in Chelsea, or the culture wasn't set up that they would take responsibility, because when things go bad, they'll just speak to the owner, repeat a few gripes. If they're not happy with the manager would go.
That's what happens incidentally at Real Madrid.
Exactly, and that just, it doesn't lend itself to a properly functioning
and then look at the trophies as well. We're going for 3-0.
Yeah, well,
Chelsea, 14 trophies since 2003.
You know, going back to its history, recent history, Ramos, Casillas, the goalkeeper, Raúl, they could all go to Perez, the president, straight away, bypass the manager.
But what about the Chelsea manager now? Like I think you made the point beforehand, Richie, about him getting the players together and this kind of discussion about the playing style. Now,
yeah, I wondered what was behind that, because we know there's fault lines between the manager and the club. So I wondered whether it was an attempt by the manager to kind of galvanise the dressing room, like so they'd kind of firm up the bond between him and the players. Maybe he felt that was needed. And also I think whether or not you listen to what the players say in a meeting like that, whether you just ignore everything they say and do the thing you always would have done in relation to team selection, what a meeting like that does, implicit in that whole meeting is the message that you respect what the players have to say. You respect their opinions, you want to hear it. So I think it was an effort by Conte to boost morale, boost confidence, to kind of improve the atmosphere in the dressing room before a tie like this.
See, what happened, I think the rot started with Costa, Diego Costa. He down tools last December, 12 months, halfway through the Premier League, when they were top of the league and challenging. And there was a lot of trouble between him and Conte on the training ground. There was a row. I think the deal was, Conte said, OK, play for me until May, let's get this job done, then you can go. Now, Abramovich wasn't in that conversation, and he Conte texted Costa, said, I don't want you anymore when they'd won the title. That's the problem. Abramovich did want him. In other words, Abramovich or his people thought they could persuade Costa. On the point of principle, Conte was right. I don't want that guy in my dressing room. And what I say has to go. So what would you do, Richard?
Yeah, he was right to get rid of him.
He was right.
He was right to get rid of him.
But that was that deepened the rift.
Yeah.
But do the players then ultimately, in the long term, you know, say he would have had pals in that dressing room, you know, as you say, it was the right call, but do the players ultimately win? Because the players, if they get into a situation where they down tools, can get the manager removed.
Yeah, they will do, and they'll continue to do it while they get away with it, because that's, going back to what Richie said about having that meeting with the players, that instantly puts the responsibility onto the players. If you say, how are we going to play against Barcelona, and they're not happy how they played against Man City, or they're not happy how they played in the first leg, the players then say, well, we want to press them, we want to do this, or we want to do that. If the manager agrees to that, all the responsibility is on the players then, and they have to perform. And I actually thought they performed reasonably well today. They put an effort in, they really tried, but the quality wasn't there in the end. But as a club, it's just so often the responsibility is just passed straight to the manager. And the players, if the manager comes out and criticises them, they all sulk, they all moan, they all say training's this, and it's never their fault, and that's where the big problem is at the club.
Yeah, leadership in the dressing room is so important. In the recent history, they had John Terry, Frank Lampard, Drogba, big characters, big leaders, good pros, right? No messing. There'd be no down in tools with those guys in the dressing room, because they break your jaw, and that's the way it should be. But now, absolutely,
there might be easier ways to do it. But anyway.
I tell you what, I've seen guys put them against the wall. You know, no, but it would happen if a player threatened or played like Hazard played 2 weeks ago against Manchester City. Someone would get him afterwards in the dressing room. And
he wasn't the only one that day.
No, he wasn't. But there isn't a John Terry on the pitch. There isn't a big character there.
But within a dressing room like that, aims at a certain culture is created where certain standards just aren't acceptable. And then in the wider picture, within a club, to use the phrase we've been using all night, if a player downs tools for any length of time, you're gone. Right, you're gone, that's not acceptable. This is a level, this is a club where that's not acceptable. But in a structure like Chelsea's, where you're looking at the manager who doesn't have full authority. So falling out with the manager isn't the nightmare scenario it used to be, because the manager had all control back in the day.
But that structure is repeated at a lot of other clubs, isn't it?
Look, take the Irish team, when Richard was there, with Damien and Robbie King, right? All the miracles they did, and all the great things they did, despite the limitations of the players' ability, you wouldn't stand for that, would you? If someone wanted to put down tools.
No, because everyone's accountable.
Exactly, and you're accountable to your mates.
Yeah, you're accountable to your teammates. At Chelsea, because they've got away with it, regardless of who the manager is, and the managers that they've had are winning managers who have either won leagues, Champions Leagues, Cups, whatever it is, the players bypass them because the owner lets them away with it, or the owner or the technical director, whoever it is, always associates the blame with the manager and just thinks, well, if Hazard's not happy, that must be the manager's fault. But
I do think that kind of thing, it's repeated at other clubs as well. They're not alone. I know we see it magnified at Stamford Bridge, but I'm just, like, let's say the manager does not continue and is not in charge next August. They're probably facing the Europa League, Richie. How much needs to be done with that team in terms of finance? And finance is one of the big problems. Conte felt he was not backed enough, as you've said, in the transfer market, and didn't get, you know, I remember he was talking about 16 or 17 players, and it was a very small squad.
Well, the issue they're going to have, which isn't new to Chelsea, this is the issue they've always had. They have to go out and try and attract a manager who is absolutely okay working under this system. So you're looking at a squad, a manager might come in and have ideas as to who should come and go. He might get to voice those ideas, but he'll have to accept from day one that they're just ideas, they're not decisions. He can throw them in the pot, but someone else will be making the decision, and that setup isn't to everyone's liking.
These guys are earning fortunes, right? Sanchez, playing for Man U last night, is earning 600 grand a week, sterling.
Reported, yeah.
Right. You look at the Irish sport, look at the Irish rugby team under Joe Schmidt, look at Jim Gavin, the Dublin footballers. They're earning nothing. In comparison, So
well, they are the GA players are earning nothing.
No,
but anyway.
they're not. You know, Sanchez is going to earn 24 million in the next 12 months. Now he shouldn't be down in tools at all. He should be able to take a bit of hardship. But this is a cultural problem in soccer that's unique to soccer at the moment. I mean, we are looking at heroic people in our sport, Gaelic sport, the rugby team. That they are heroic. They're brilliant. They lift the hearts of the nation. And the soccer lads have done it time after time, in Richard's time. Now, that's the same idea as these guys who are on that kind of money and they won't even try.
I don't think it's a money issue. I think footballers have always earned money, and I think they're wealthy enough that if they get 600 or they get 100,000, it's enough. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't think it's that. I think I've spoke to people at Chelsea, and from the age of 17, 18, they have people who are signed to one player who will go and pick their wallpaper for them, go and open their letters for them, go and do all that stuff. That breeds just complete laziness throughout the club.
Sounds fantastic. Sorry, go on.
Sounds, nice for a designer show, but for
if you're looking for a letter opener, you know where to go.
You don't produce footballers with any grit and any determination. Everything in their lives is just, they don't even have to.
You don't learn to accept responsibility.
Yeah, you don't have responsibility.
And then you can make the point about those young players who, at Chelsea, how many of them have actually made it into the first team? Because at one stage, was it 3 seasons ago, they had 60 players out on loan, and the players out on loan had scored more than the players in the first team, and all that sort of thing. But it is a fascinating debate. It's an amazing subject to watch.
Just to go back to one of the lead player of tonight, Lionel Messi, in this age of conceit and flash and all the things that are wrong, every time he goes out to play, he's brilliant, he's professional, he hugs his mates when they score, when he scores, he's perfect. You look at his great rival Ronaldo, who's narcissistic, it's me. So they're all
hugely successful as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know,
But I mean, there's a quote from the other day. He said, "I love looking at myself." He said, I love looking at the mirror and I admire myself. He actually said that, talking about himself. It wasn't Sam Allardyce, it was Ronaldo. The thing is, there's an element of narcissism that comes with money. Look at Neymar's behaviour. He's got a day off and he gets a private jet and he goes to Ibiza to have a night out with some supermodels. Now that is not conducive to getting results. And he wants to leave PSG now to go back to Real Madrid.
And he won't be the last to
all
do
of
that
these
sort
things
of thing.
feed in. And to go back to Conte, he was a real pro, a grafter. He managed Juventus very successfully. He's old school. He wouldn't want that kind of nonsense. And he wouldn't put up with it. And he's going to pay the price. He'll go. If Chelsea were sensible, he'd stay and the troublemakers would go.
You mentioned, Eamon, about Messi, and we saw him, well, first of all, score the fastest goal in the first half of his career, 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Then we saw tonight, Richie, the third goal, which kind of killed the thing off, his 100th Champions League goal after 63 minutes.
Brought about by the same source as Billaqueta, not him personally, but this tendency that Chelsea had to give the ball away cheaply in areas that a forward line like Barcelona can punish you. So he gave it away in a halfway line. Suarez picked it up, advanced with pace, and at this pace, it's 3-on-3. Messi comes around the back. It's 4v4, and no one can land a glove on this fella in that area. He's too quick. We had a discussion here, myself and Eamon, about the goalkeeping position. I think I'd have some sympathy with Courtois. He's got to come out and make his frame big to close down the angle. Unavoidably, that usually involves spreading your legs, and he just didn't have the pace or the quick feet from that distance, given the accuracy and the pace of the shot, to do anything about it. Really, really good finish, but brought about by their own carelessness on the ball yet again.
And their own errors. And look, we're going to look at the 3 goals together now, and you will see this point about Chelsea errors and being punished clinically.
Yeah, because like we said, they actually played reasonably well, but when you make them mistakes, you're not going to have a chance, and they have plenty of players back here in Barcelona play it the way they have been. Messi stands in this position and waits. Amy said earlier, Hazard does the right thing, shows him down the outside. From that position he shouldn't score, and you can say whatever you want, but the keeper shouldn't let the ball through his legs. Here, Fabregas ends up giving the ball away. Christian makes a bad decision to dive in, and then they're in the trouble. You know, it's two bad decisions straight away. Space there, and Dembele again with a lovely finish. And they're punished by really good players, so it is difficult for them. But again, a bad pass, and straight away Barcelona's first thought is just go, just direct football. There's no turning back. And once this chap gets on the ball, it's very difficult. But for me, I think again the goalkeeper has to save it, and we'll see in this situation it's pretty similar. He has the ball at his feet. Again, just a sloppy decision, bad foot, bad pass, and then this one he does manage to get down and save it between his legs. But in the first leg it was Christensen who gave the ball away. Azpilicueta dived in on a ball that he wasn't going to win, and they conceded then, and that's the 4 goals that they conceded could have been avoided.
Okay. The Chelsea penalty appeal, Eamon, it came at a vital time in the tie in the game of the night. They were 2-0 down at the time. Was this a penalty?
Well, I think it was a penalty, but I've great respect for Ronnie Whelan, and Ronnie seemed he said he wasn't sure. It looked clear-cut to me, and here's a few slow-motion shots. There's contact between Piqué there, and he pulls at the shirt, then he pulls his arm. Now, there's no reason for Christensen, or for Alonso rather, to go down, because he's in on goal, he's got a clear shot and he's going to score, I think. But I'd be interested in Ronnie's opinion, obviously, and the lad's opinion. But I thought that motion by Piqué unbalanced Alonso, and he fell. And that's penalty.
I think it's a penalty kick. I think it's soft. It's not the most ferocious of contact between them, but it deals clearly, as we've seen from the picture. He puts his arm out, pulls your man's arm back, and he goes down. So it's a penalty kick for me. And at that stage in the tie, had the penalty been given and converted, it's 2-1, and things look a little bit different for a while.
Richard, penalty for you?
Yeah. If I was to do that in the box and I heard the whistle, I'd fear the worst. Like Rich said, it's not a bad tackle or anything like that, but it is a penalty. It's a foul, and it should have been given, and it would have changed the atmosphere around the game.
The final piece, Richie, we're going to look at it is some of the good Chelsea play that we saw in the second half. Like, they did start the second half pretty well, and you know, okay, the penalty appeal came, but just to have a look at this,
I think they did a lot of. There was a lot of good moments, and tonight, and again in the first leg as well. They'd point to a lot of things. You asked a question earlier: will they have any complaints? It's things like this. Could they have made that pass a little bit quicker, just a fraction of a second, which wouldn't allow the recovery tackle? And again here, they're not dealing with a huge amount of space, intricate little passes, and again, can that be played? And the shot really well blocked there by Piqué. So there was opportunities that created lots of reasons for them to be confident and to rue missed chances. But in the end, at this level, this was disappointing for me. If you're Hazard and you've done that, and you turn around and no one is supporting you, no one is there in the box at all, you'd be very disappointed. And Rudiger here hits the crossbar, which is the 4th time they did that in the tie. So chances created, but lots of near misses and what ifs and if onlys. They were beaten by a better team over the two legs.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much.